Tonight on Legion Games. Special quarantine episodes. Yeah, I tested positive for COVID. Awesome. So, now that we're past that, let's talk about some board games. First up tonight, it's going to be a rant to begin with you, if you don't mind that. So, I've been doing these Kickstarter reviews, these previews, these critiques sort of things, and one thing that I always wonder, and I always am amused by and slash irritated by when I see this and I'm uploading things, is I go to the website, I go to Board Game Geek, and I see there's two or three others. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't mind competition, I don't mind alternate views. I think that's how you get the best ability to choose what's right for you, by choosing someone whose interests align with your own. We all have those people that we either align with or we don't. But the thing I'm really befuddled by is the fact that some of these reviews or these opinions about whether or not you should back it come out like a day after the campaign launches. And I don't understand that. It's like a lot of these videos don't even seem to have advanced knowledge. Some do, some don't. But already, this is your complete opinion. This is what you should know. Well, half these campaigns have half the content hidden behind stretch goals and updates and expansions. And so I just find it really weird that people are like, oh yeah, I got to click on this right away. And there's a lot of good quality content to go along with that. But people really want to rush to premature judgment. The other thing I find odd is these preview videos that are so prevalent. But the preview videos, I just don't understand that. It's a phenomenon. Maybe someone can explain it to me. Maybe I'm the old man shouting on my lawn, get off my lawn. But you know what? I just don't understand it. It's basically a 2 to 6 minute video of the text that is on the Board Game Geek page with maybe a scant more information. I understand that people want snippets, but oftentimes these don't have any considerable depth to them, and there's no opinion, and yet it's paid content. It just it just boggles my mind how that is the most prevalent and the most click-worthy thing in our hobby. People demand transparency, they demand depth, and yet those are the things that they're clicking on. The two just don't seem to line up. So if you're going to demand one thing and put your views in another, well, no wonder you're seeing more of that. No wonder you're seeing that everywhere on every single Kickstarter page or every single retail page. It's because what you're clicking on. If you don't like somebody's practices on Kickstarter, you don't support them with your wallet. Same thing with this. If you don't like the preview videos, why are so many of you watching them? And that's human nature. That's human nature. I do it too. It's just confusing to me. Okay, rant over. Let's get on to some board game news. Now, first up tonight, as you all know, I'm a CMON fanboy. This comes no news to some of you who have watched my other videos. There's some of their games are some of my most eagerly anticipated, most played games in terms of things I can get to the table very easily, and sometimes a little more difficult. But one of the ones I'm waiting on right now is Marvel United. Now, Marvel United sort of got lambasted by people as being this super lightweight, it's not going to be any good, sort of CMON game where just, throw them under the bus and, move on to the next thing. But it still raised almost $3 million, which is pretty impressive for um, what it was considered at the time. Although you can make a good case that given the Marvel IP, it should have been a lot more. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's perfect for where my kids are going to be at by the time it delivers. You can see right here, I ended up backing this, but I got the all-in. I went the all-in during the Pledge Manager. I probably should have bought 2 or 3 because I think you could flip this game and earn a really good profit. But that being said, I'm really excited to be able to paint this too with the chibis. I know a lot of people don't like the chibi miniatures, but they're going to be perfect. I just got Studio 75's Kickstarter for their version of contrast paints in the mail. And so these are perfect for me being able to sit down with my 6-year-old who draws better than I do to paint as a first-time paint. So I'm excited about that. Now, why am I bringing this up as the first news point? I'm bringing this up because they just announced in 2021 they are going to expand. And you can see the focus there on expand with the big X, because if you look in the preview video here, I mean, it's only 11 seconds long, but you can see already they are going X-Men. What everyone was asking for, everyone was clamoring for. Now this is interesting because X-Men was actually just announced like a month ago or within the past month for the Marvel Crisis Protocol, the skirmish game. And I was going to feature it then, but it sort of flew under the radar and I don't do skirmish. And so I just sort of noted that as a side note and said, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder if we're going to see the X-Men somewhere else in the board game world soon. Because we really haven't seen them outside of Marvel Legendary. Now, here you go. You've got probably Angel. You've probably got, this looks like Magic. This looks like Storm. You have Wolverine, maybe Cyclops. You have Beast. This looks like Juggernaut, maybe. I mean, this could be a host of people here. This looks like Bishop or Cable. I mean, the possibilities that they could go with in this make me super, super, super excited because I am more of an X-Men original fan growing up than I was a Marvel in general. X-Men were always of more interest. I thought they were more interesting now. Think they're more interesting in terms of depth of storylines um, as they have gone on. Now, I'm not going to get into that. That's a comic book is a whole different world. But this is probably one of the most exciting game announcements for me recently and I don't even have the base game yet. So I guess the question just is if this game actually holds up to what the early reviews from the retail version have said, and it's not too complicated, and it's not just too much of a good thing, because you can definitely have that, especially in the board game scene. My Arcadia Quest collection is proof of that. I'm intrigued to see what variability they can add to this. Now, speaking of IPs, we're going to do a quick changeover here. IPs that should be worth tons of money, but have trouble. If you were paying attention closely at all, this was almost a blink on Kickstarter. It was announced probably 2 or 3 days before. I think I saw some ads on Facebook, a couple of videos by like the Tantrum House guys. Harry Potter Catch the Snitch. So basically, they took Quidditch and made it a board game now. This was by Night Models over in Europe. The guys who did the Harry Potter skirmish game, which the models looked really good, but I ended up avoiding the FOMO. And I guess people are still having trouble with getting those miniatures replaced. They're so brittle. The game itself was apparently sort of half cooked from the better descriptions I've heard. So they decided to do Quidditch now. They must still have the license. And I give them props. One of the probably the only props I'll give them in this video is that they put their funding goal of the true probably funding goal that they need, not a false fake one of almost $500,000. Apart from that, it was just a cluster. So the pricing point for the base game was 100 euros. The all-in was 300 euros. Two of the four teams, the non-Slytherin and the non-Gryffindor teams, were just nameless. They didn't even give names to any of the people. So they sort of like had 2 or 3 on a team that were named, and then like none of the rest were just like generic seeker, generic snitch finder, whatever. And so people were just up in arms to begin with. They put the rule book out, so again, I mean, it was nice to see, but I glanced at it and it didn't seem anything to be catching my eye, and so I watched it hit about 10% in the first 12 to 16 hours, just wondering what was going to happen, and then they announced. This is really where I think it shows what they're either not used to Kickstarter in general, or they are not savvy to what is actually going on in the board gaming scene as a whole. They said, we're delaying things due to the uncertainty derived from the electoral campaign in the US. They blamed our election for stealing enough content and backers and money to support their campaign. Meanwhile, Darkest Dungeon just hit like 5.5 million or something like that. I mean, come on now. And so then they're restarting it next week, and next week's not going to be any better unless they change a lot of the issues that they've already seen on here. I don't see this going anywhere unless they just falsely lower the funding goal of like to like 50,000, and then you're going to fund, and then people are going to end up with a game in 3 years that they don't like. But they're postponing it next week in the middle of Burn Cycle and Bardsung, so it'll be interesting to watch. But that's all I'll be doing from that side of things. Now, transitioning to other Kickstarter messes, that's sort of the theme this week. This was brought to my attention by one of the viewers, Shadow Tactics, the board game based off of the video game. The video game is very well thought of. It's very brutal. Antler Games brought this, and again, it's a huge IP. It only raised 85,000 euros. So there were obviously some issues. There were obviously some concerns about it just from the get-go. Again, it's a miniature game. It was sort of this solo meets multiplayer game. They said we're going to make it a solo co-op too. They just threw out this update, and this boggles my mind because this is now 2 in the last month. That just what is going on with people, and I have to feel like it's more than just COVID. It's just becoming poor planning as well, or other financial things that people aren't willing to be upfront about. They are launching a late pledge campaign, not just including late backers, but they are launching a whole nother campaign so that you can get the exact same thing, maybe with a slight twist. And I'm not even sure it's actually gameplay. It's maybe just alternate art or something as the same as everyone else 2 years ago, essentially. And backers are a little upset, to say the least, and it just doesn't make any sense because they're not even in production. They're still in development. And I can't help but think this reminds me very much of Street Masters, and the Street Masters guys commented on my previous video of this, but they funded a second Street Masters on Indiegogo at the same time when there were still backers from the previous campaign of Aftershock that had not gotten their rewards, and just really weird in general. And this is what that screams to me as well, is they are launching a whole other campaign to try and get people to back this because it seems like me that funds are low. That's what this screams to me. Now, is there any more evidence to this than baseless speculation? No. This is all baseless speculation. I have no idea. They addressing it in the comment section, but revamped base game. I mean, this is what they should have been in the original. You're still this far out and you're revamping things. When did this originally fund? This originally fund, it was due to be delivered in December 19, so we're almost a year overdue then. So this funded in February 19. So they are going to be 2 years from funding, by the time this campaign ends because they're launching it in December. Like 2 years have gone by and the people don't even have their originals. You haven't even done production, and now you're asking for more people to buy in on this. What is with the samurai theme? Is the samurai theme cursed? This reminds me so much of Onimaru. And if you're not familiar with Onimaru, we'll hop over there real quick. This game actually looks amazing to me. This is probably, when it funded, this was the one game that I said, I have the misser's regret, if you will. Like, I regret not backing this. Well, it turns out that that was actually a really good thing because, as you can see, this funded also in January 2019, and they haven't even gone into production either. Guy hasn't finished the rule book. People are pissed. He's been saying things, like sort of, people are just concerned that they're not going to get a product. I won't. You can go dig into it on the Board Game Geek page. You can dig into the updates in the comment sections here, but I don't know if this theme is cursed or what. This looks like a super hard, super competitive co-op game that just looked amazing in terms of dice mitigation and art, but it's gone nowhere. It's gone nowhere in almost 2 years, and that's worrisome. So it's still on my wish list if it ever hits at retail, but I looked at late backing this for a while too. I'm really glad I didn't. But the two of these seem to have that same theme, that what is going on? Like, no one knows. At least with Street Masters, I'll say they put out a good product. The in-between was kind of a mess logistically, and I understand that that happens. So I give them more of a pass on that side of things. But these two, I mean, this is stuff that, these are not small funding. These aren't, $30,000-$40,000 funding. This is much more than that. And these are both games that looked really good on the surface. And so that just goes to show that you really need to do your homework now and really be careful. And if anything, it's even more reason to $1 pledge during these campaigns and then bump up later at the end of the pledge manager, rather than putting down this $100, $120, $150 during the actual campaign that you may not be able to get back, or may only be able to get a portion of back. So beware. That's all I'm saying. Now, speaking of good Kickstarter news is that Tainted Grail, the titan that it is, they have announced that the Wave 2 is coming. So this is just massive. I mean, look at the size of those pictures and those games. Um, there's so much stuff. I haven't even gotten my original game to the table yet. This is what I wanted Seventh Continent to be, and it's gonna be. I actually did split shipping on this one, unlike Ether Fields, which I just checked on GameFound today and realized I did single shipping. So I'm a little mad at myself now for that, but that's a whole other issue. So Tainted Grail is coming. So you're going to see it on the hotness. You're going to see people selling it. You're going to see people buying it. Be aware if it's all on your radar. I'm going to circle back around now to Darkest Dungeon, which just finished funding today. It raised over $5.5 million. But can I just say for a minute, this Kickstarter aside, it had two things that I already mentioned one of them in this video, and I'm going to state the other one as well that really seemed to peeve me that I see more and more Kickstarters doing, and especially the Kickstarter this size from a company this size, it felt kind of lowbrow, if you will. One was sending out a message to all the backers during the last 48 hours, even during the last 24 hours, asking them to up their pledge. And I think it said something along the lines of, well, you know what? I'll just read it to you. Approaching the final 24 hours, remember you get a freebie. Now there's 5 expansions, guys. You can add all 5 expansions. We've locked a ton of stretch goals. We're doing PvP. We added like 3 more modes at the end of the game. And if you want to upgrade even further, come on, upgrade even further. I mean, do you really have to be messaging people, especially the non-$1 people that are already backing you for triple digits, to even put in more money? I mean, it just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know if it rubs anyone else the wrong way, but it definitely does me. The second thing is the other thing I even just mentioned on is the fact that they're added like 2 or 3 different game modes at the end. They added like a hard mode, they added a solo mode, they added a skirmish mode. This is exactly what got Shadow Tactics in trouble, is that they listened to backers and they added these modes that really weren't designed to be with the game in the first place. And I see more and more people doing that. And I understand that you want to listen to your backers. It's sort of like in healthcare. You know, in healthcare, we used to be a patriarchy where the doctors told you what to do. Now it's this shared decision making where you and the doctor talk and you decide what to do together. And Kickstarter has sort of gone that way too. But now I think it's swinging, just like in healthcare, it's swinging too far the other way, where the patients are driving the medical care and the backers are driving the campaign. And finally, I think some companies are going to have to just put their foot down and say, look, we're not going to put a solo mode in this. This doesn't work. We can't put a cooperative in this. This doesn't work. Or we can't put a competitive. This doesn't work. And I think people are just going to have to deal with that. And squeaky wheel is getting the grease way too often. And I don't think it's an overall good thing for our industry, because you're ending up with these huge delays. You're ending up with modes that don't really work and can't be fully fleshed out. And then people are unhappy with the product of what they demanded in the first place. Come on, people. Be willing to work with these creators. Don't just whine and whine and whine. Kickstarter comment sections are already toxic and horrible enough to scroll through sometimes. Don't make it worse. So next up, if we're going to stay with the Kickstarter theme, we might as well just go all hog wild in this. One of the games I'm most excited for, this is probably the most exciting dungeon crawler to me that's been announced that we know of that's coming up. And this is going to sound really weird because it's by Steamforged Games, and I have been a big critic of them in the past about some of the other campaigns that they've run. But so far, with their own IP, with their own design of this game, and they've been putting out updates on Facebook and on their page, I've actually been really impressed. I've been in contact with them. Hopefully, I'm actually going to be able to play a game of Tabletopia later this week or next weekend. So I'm excited to see what it actually entails, because it seems like they're learning from the past. And from my other video that I mentioned with Ludus Magnus Studios, where their latest game, Nova Aetas, I thought was really make or break for them. I think this is a coming of age for Steamforged Games, and I'm really interested to see what they can show, because this is their own IP. They're not taking someone else's and trying to translate it. They are building this from the ground up. They are making what they like, how they like it, of guys who are like us. And so I'm really, really, really hopeful that this is going to be a step up from their previous stuff, because it does seem like since Dark Souls, since the other couple games, including Horizon Zero Dawn and the other 2 IPs that I'm blanking on currently, they've made progress, they've learned, they've addressed stuff, they're responsive, and I want to see what this looks like. This is launching on November 10. I would say check it out. I think it's not going to do as well as like something like Darkest Dungeon, but this appeals to me more of what the depth has. And I'm probably going to try and do a much more in-depth video sometime next week talking about what it is, why I'm excited, and why it's different, and why it's probably my first or second, like I said earlier, most exciting dungeon crawler that I'm looking forward to over other ones that I've even passed on or are upcoming as well. The next game I'm actually excited about, and I've never said this about one of their games, is Red Raven Games Rift Knights. And I've not been a fan of a lot of the Red Raven games. They've just never appealed to me. The play style, the worker placement, the that sort of realm has never really given me much appeal. This is an asymmetrical 2 to 6 player game that is competitive. Now, that's going to turn a lot of people off with the next phrase I'm going to say is that it's team play, essentially, in the 2 to 6 player. It can be one on one, where one side is the demons and one side is the knights, but the 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all team play, and team play is difficult. It's not easy by any means. 1v all essentially is what the 3 player is. It's 1 versus 2. And anytime you have that, the balancing has to be very, very delicate. Is this necessarily unique in its theme? No. But I'm in contact with some of the representatives, and I'm looking over a rule book right now. And so hopefully on the next video I make, I'll have a little bit more insight into what makes this unique and why is this different, and why do you need to keep this on your radar as a team game or even a 1v1 game compared to other things that are out there on the market. And this is a big departure for Red Raven Games of the other previous ones that they've done in terms of the mechanics, in terms of the theme in general. A lot of it has been very nature oriented, world oriented, and this is fantasy fighting, take that, where a lot of their other games have been sort of the opposite of that. So I don't know what to expect, but I think it's going to be well received just by Red Raven pedigree alone. Okay, so now I'm back to you after a quick shave. I said earlier that I didn't understand the interest, but clearly people are interested. So let's do it. I'm gonna follow the trend here a little bit, but I'm gonna do it on my way to give my little spin on it. So we're gonna do a Kickstarter quickfire challenge here to see how many of these we can go through in a short period of time, rapid, rapid, rapid style. So bear with me, buckle up, let's go. Okay, here we go. First up, Atlantis Rising, Monstrosities. This is the big box expansion with Medusa and everything. You got your Greek mythology, you got your worker placement-esque card co-op game that has got pretty good reviews at retail. It's live on Kickstarter. Now, is it worth it? I think if you're a fan of the base game, you already have the base game, plus or minus the deluxeifications. I think it's a must back from that side of things. So I think the price point is relatively decent. However, I'm not sure as a whole it is worth it because it's over 100, like 30 bucks with shipping included to get everything at this point. So I think it's one that if you are on the fence at all, you should probably pick up the base game at retail if you can find it or trade for it and decide from that side of things. This is a great $1 back if you are considering getting it at retail because you'll probably have plenty of time to decide whether that $1 is worth it or not for you. This one, for some reason, just never hit my vibe. I didn't get it the first time around. I sort of am turned off by the deluxeification. So if anything, it's going to be a retail with expansion, just like I may eventually pick it up base game wise at retail as well. Next up, Pachacuna. Now this is a Peruvian game where you are a llama. You are taking your llama across either the mountains or the plains, and you are just going one-on-one with this modular board of hexes that you are just rotating to try and line up these paths because one llama can only move on the mountains, one llama can only move on the paths, and so you are trying to pick up and deliver these resources. You're trying to the first one to get 7 resources. Theme is great. They've appropriated it appropriately, and they've put their homework in. So is it for me? I'm not really sure. I think this is one that I would probably pick up at retail. I don't need all the deluxe features. I'm also not a big fan of pick up and deliver personally, but I think it's enough of a twist on an abstract game that I like the actual concept of being only able to move on certain tracks. The price point is a little higher than I'd like, to be fair, but I think you're paying for a little bit of that exoticness in a good way in this game. So if you like abstracts, if you like pick up and delivers, if you like the combination, if you just like either one, I think it's worth checking out from that side of things. Next up, Endless Winter, Paleoamericans. Now this is one of the rage, as I mentioned before previously in a video. This is worker placement deck building. This is almost at $500,000. No, I'm gonna pass on this right now, and I'll tell you why. I think the price point is high for what it is. It's like $70 for the base game. It's like almost 100 bucks for the deluxeification. But you also have the other two games, Lost Ruins of Arnak, as well as Dune Imperium,
that are going to be in retail in the next month or two. This one is scheduled to be delivered at the end of 2021. If you're lucky, more likely just knowing how Kickstarters work, the beginning of 2022. So you'll have plenty of time to decide whether or not this is for you. Again, this is another $1 backer if you're considering that genre at all. The other risk is that although the previews on this one are good, you have other copies that have actually hit retail of the other games where you can actually get reviews present time, and reviews on those other ones are really good. So this one again has a high ceiling, but it's a little bit of an unknown. You're taking a little risk to try and be in on the hotness. For all of those factors, I'm going to pass. I would probably pick up one of the other two first if I were you, but that's just me personally. Next up, Star Scrappers Orbital. This is an engine building, design game from the guy who made Terraforming Mars, and I think it hasn't really hit off. It's got less than 1,000 backers. I think the price point is too high for what it is. For everything, you're getting over $107 pay, and I think for an engine building game without a high amount of miniatures, that's a lot of money, and so I think you're going to see a lot more retail availability. I am not personally a big fan of Terraforming Mars, so that doesn't do anything for me in terms of the pedigree. So I think it's interesting that a lot more people have not gravitated over to this. I think it's weird that I didn't see this on the hotness being marketed everywhere else beforehand, so I'm not sure what happened there. But I think it's one that you wait and you check out at retail. I just don't know enough about it to say that you should probably get it right now. Now, here we go. Freedom 5. This is one's going to be a little divisive. I am in on this. I'm going to be probably keeping this pledge. I'm going to be trying to do a whole separate video before this ends, but frankly speaking, with time being what it is, I may not. It's over $500,000. It's almost at 4,000 backers. This is a reskin with a twist of Defenders of the Realm in the past, where you've got your superheroes, you're moving around, you're fighting villains, you're trying to essentially do what all co-op games do and pandemic it from becoming too bad too quick. And you've got the Sadler brothers who've taken their spin on it as well. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Sentinels of the Multiverse game in the first place, so that did nothing for me. That was actually a slight turnoff, but it seems like this has enough variation. The caveat with this is that if you don't like dice, you're not going to like this game. There's a lot of dice rolling. There's not as much pure strategy that you may just get a bad roll, as much mitigation as you have. So you may not like that at all. If you don't like that, this is going to be an easy pass. But if you like dice, if you like that sort of thing, this is an easy win for me. They're adding more things. They said a little bit of a slow start and the stretch goals, and so they redid them, so now they're much closer together, so you're getting a lot more. They're adding more features to give more replayability. I still have some balance concerns, but for me, I'm probably going to end up keeping it just because I like this sort of game. It checks all the boxes that I'm looking for. Don't get got. It's a party game. It's by Shut Up and Sit Down. You can get the whole thing for a cheap price. If you like that sort of thing, if your gaming interests line up with Shut Up and Sit Downs, who are heavy party gamers, with the people that you can get to the table, even though it's a pandemic, so that's be aware. This is an easy say yes. Otherwise, if you don't fit those select criteria, I think it's an easy pass. Boom. Nova Aetas Renaissance. I already mentioned this in the whole previous video by Ludus Magnus. They are over $750,000, almost 5,600 backers at this time. This is a remake, a 2.0 version of the original Nova Aetas in the first place. Ludus Magnus has had some rulebook issues. They've had some delivery issues. We're still waiting for the second wave of Black Rose Wars. That's a big gripe by a lot of people. But this is their take on the dungeon crawler campaign sort of legacy-esque genre. And I think this is going to be a big make it or break it for them when this comes out. It's either going to reestablish themselves as someone that you can trust and you can get beautiful art, miniatures, and an actual game from, or this is going to be one where people are going to go, I just don't know if I can really go forward with them because the pedigree just hasn't been as good as it should be. I think the theme is there. I think the models and art are beautiful, but for me, it's an easy pass just because of their history, and I'm not willing to risk it. The ceiling is high, but the bottom is also a lot lower than some of the other games that run similar to this. The Librarians, the adventure card game. Now, I am a owner of the original Warehouse 13 Kickstarter, based off of the other sci-fi property of the similar name. Now, Librarians, this is by a different company, but I just have to say pass on it. It's funding low, the price point is high, you're not getting anything exclusive, you're not getting anything really extra, it's all add-ons, and I always worry about IP issues because that's what Warehouse 13 ran into, even though a lot of the stuff, even the actors were involved. So from that, I just can't endorse it. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I think it actually looks like a relatively interesting co-op game with a few interesting twists on things, but it's definitely a pick up at retail. There's no reason not to pick it up at retail. All the stuff they're offering for like stretch goals right now is alternative art stuff. So I don't see an incentive to back it now versus waiting. Going back to party type ish games, this is Feed the Kraken. Feed the Kraken is basically Secret Hitler on the ocean. Now, what you're doing is instead of just fascists and socialists, you've got three different crews. You've got one, two, and you've got the cult in the middle trying to get fed to the Kraken. And what you're doing is you're trying to basically really just elect people and decide which direction of the port you're trying to head to. And then the cult is trying to get themselves fed to the Kraken. And I think the art is beautiful. I think the board is beautiful. I don't need miniatures though, and the price point is too high because of it. I think part of that is the reason why it's funding lower than I would have expected. And we'll see. I think it's a try before you buy. I'd love it if it was somebody at somebody else's house, and I'd love to play it there. I don't think it's one that I have to own just for that reason, though. And I think, judging by the funding, maybe some people are in agreement with that. Kabuto Sumo. I am backing this. I was all set to back on this. I am getting gifted a copy now, so I will probably cancel this pledge, but I am all in on this otherwise. Kabuto Sumo, think of Push Fight, the classic abstract game that is relatively hard to find nowadays. Penny Arcade did a version of it that has gone out of print as well. This is basically Push Fight where you're pushing your blocks, trying to push other people's blocks off. Now, what they did is they threw sumo as the mechanism, and then they threw bugs, real life bugs, with powers that simulate the bug characteristics in the first place to really make the theme stick. I think you're paying for what you're getting. Now, I'm a little surprised this is funding as low as it is, but that being said, let's take a look at it real quick. It's under 200,000, but it's got almost 4,200 backers. The reason for that is the base game pledge is $29. The expansion is only $44 total with it. And so I think the price point is low, and it's a great price point for something like that. Now, I think the other reason it's low is because it's also abstract and dexterity-ish. So if you don't like either of those things, you're going to literally, excuse the pun, toss it out and not even consider it. But if either of those things strikes true to you and the artwork is great on the bugs themselves, they've given them a lot of flair, check it out. I think it's worth talking about from that side of things. Speaking of games I will be backing, Townsfolk Tussle, I did a whole video on just looking at this Kickstarter. I'm going to be keeping this one. This is Kingdom Death Monster cut down, Kingdom Death Monster Light, where they took just the boss battles, the part that everyone likes. They kept the AI, they twisted it, they've added terrain, they're adding different variability in terms of the order of the bosses. You're fighting 4 bosses total to win. You are the townsfolk trying to fight off these ruffians from overrunning your town. They're only at just over $250,000, which is, frankly speaking, a little lower than I thought. But again, the price point for this is a little bit lower. I like the fact that they're not throwing in expansion after expansion after expansion, so that you're fearing of missing out, so that your $85 pledge all of a sudden turns into, like $185 or $230. So they have my blessing from that side of things. I think it's a great segue as well if you're looking for something heavier to get your gaming group into. Looks like it'll hit the table really easily. The rule book is already there. Check it out. The artwork was originally a turnoff for me. I am not a fan of that, but if that was you too, I think it's still worth checking out because I think the gameplay is there and I'm going to be keeping it even though I don't necessarily think the artwork is the most appealing. So they're also offering standees. So they're not just getting plastic, you're getting both. Grand Grand Austria Hotel, the expansion and the deluxe upgrade. It's a worker placement. I don't think it needs the deluxe upgrade. From everything I've read comment-wise, especially with the price point, I think it's a retail game if you can get it at retail. I think the expansion is the same way. It's adding different modules. This is a great game. I don't think it needs deluxeification. It's a dice worker placement. There are plenty of other worker placements out there in the meantime, and I think you can wait. If you've already been waiting for years to get the expansion to even come out, I think you can wait a little longer to get it at retail, and you're probably going to save a few bucks. Dire Alliance Horror, mentioning the Sadlers and Blacklist games earlier. This is their latest on Kickstarter. It's not even at $250,000, which is a little surprising. But I think there's just something said that you can only have so many of these games, and they have a separate funding Indiegogo right now for Street Masters, or maybe it's done. I like the fact that you can get just the miniatures alone. You can get just the base game alone. They've done the MDS system, the modular deck system again, but there's only so many iterations that you can have. I'm not a big fan of horror themes. I just don't know how true that strikes with everyone else. I have to wonder if that's part of the low funding level, that people just aren't a fan of the theme or the mechanisms. It's a little bit different. It's more of one-on-one. You take your faction versus somebody else's faction, a little skirmish like that. You can also do cooperative, but it just doesn't do anything for me. So from both of those, it's an easy pass. But like I said, I give them props for being willing to split the miniatures to use in future games, it says, but the all-in for this is something like $210 even before shipping. So that's a big price point. That being said, if you're going to go for it, it's probably worth it to get it now during the Kickstarter if it really is for you, because like the Street Masters games, they have held their value at retail afterwards, and some of the expansions are harder to get. Boom, two more. We have Sakura Arms, Duel Under Falling Cherry Blossoms. Now, we're going with the Japanese theme here at the end. This is an import game that Level 99 Games has taken and that is remastering under their own. There's another license, I think by AEG, that expired a couple years ago, and it's been imported by various people who are familiar with the Japanese game scene and given the equivalent of subtitles, printing off English versions and putting them in sleeves. This is under 100,000, I think partially because there are no stretch goals, and there's just a little expansion pack that you get extra, little promo pack of a couple cards. And they did it in 3 boxes instead of 1 box. And I think you're a lot of people that just aren't terribly happy with this. The market is relatively saturated, even by themselves in this niche genre with things like Exceed and BattleCon. And especially with other ones thrown in there like Yomi, there's not a whole lot of room, even though this game is critically acclaimed in this genre to begin with. If you're like me, I'm backing right now, but there's a really good chance that I'm going to cancel this pledge before the end because the 3 boxes gives me a lot of redundancy in terms of the markers and some of that material, and I just don't really want that as much as I want all of the 18 goddesses that are being used. So I think this is one that I, especially with getting my BattleCon soon here, am going to easily pass and pick up at retail if the feeling strikes me at that point, or trade for it, if you will. So I think from that side of things, missing the promo pack, which Level 99 doesn't really do exclusives, so you'll probably be able to pick up it in the retail store later online. I think I'm probably going to end up canceling this. I think those are the reasons why you're seeing such a low funding. Last up, we're going to bookend the video here with the feudal Japan sort of theme. This is Shogun No Katana. This is a strategic Euro game where you are designing weapons and specifically the katana mentioned in the game title. It's a relatively low funding goal. It didn't get a lot of hype. I think part of the reason is the price point is pretty expensive. And it's throwing miniatures into a Euro game. And a lot of the people who are interested in Euro games aren't interested in having huge hunks of plastic to be their markers on the board. And there's not a huge overlap in terms of the Venn diagram of those types of situations. And so for that reason, I think you have a low funding goal. The price point is also a little bit higher, especially on the Euro game market. As I was just talking about the 2-player battle game, Euro games are even more saturated. And so especially without a high pedigree to get people interested in the first place, this is one that's probably going to have to prove itself at retail before you're going to be able to track or back at a significantly higher level in terms of funding. So I'm not surprised by where it's at. It's doing good for a first time, but it'll be interesting to see where it's at retail unless this is really striking home to you and you're one of those niche people. It might be hard to pick up at retail. I don't know what the retail distribution is going to look like. So if it's really, really, really striking you, otherwise I think you do wait for retail and see what happens because if it's good, like they say, you will be able to pick it up at retail. Boom. There we go. That is your Kickstarter Quickfire. I hope you enjoyed it. I did actually, so maybe that's why people do the short preview videos. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for skimming. Thank you for clicking. Some of the videos that I already did earlier this week or last week were directly from subscriber suggestions and commenter suggestions. And so I am totally up for that. I'm totally up for looking into things and giving my opinion on things. I want to get the word out there. I just want to have people listen. So give me your clicks, give me your likes, give me your comments. Let me know how good I'm doing. Let me know how poorly I'm doing. Hopefully the sound is a little bit better on this one. Hopefully we'll get a little bit better overall on every single video. That is my goal. Again, transparency as a backer, as someone else online that is in your shoes. Thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Stay classy.